Good morning. Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Sarah Jane. I am the SIFPAC support staff for this morning. Welcome to the 2024 Fall Mixer, Scaling for Success, Supplier Development Tools for Farms and Food Businesses, hosted by the GFPI team. The Good Food Purchasing Initiative team and all of our partners are working to make the Chicagoland food system more equitable and transparent with local, sustainable, fair, humane, nutritious food. Our work includes shifting institutional procurement through the Good Food Purchasing Program, and also uplifting our suppliers with resources and events like this. So thank you for joining Unpacking LFPA, Insights, Strategies, and Opportunities for Midwest Producers, featuring a panel discussion. I am going to hand it over to our wonderful moderator, facilitator, and speakers, and we will let you get started. So excited to be here with you all, and if you have any questions, of a technical nature, feel free to shoot me a message in the chat. We will have a Q&A section, and you'll be able to send messages in the chat that way as well. If you have substantive questions throughout the session, I will clock them here and make sure that our moderator gets them. Okay, and I'm going to hand it over to Portia.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Portia McGuire. I am the Equity and Engagement Coordinator for Northwest Indiana Food Council. I'm also an Indiana Value Chain Coordinator. A lot of what I do is connect farmers and food businesses with resources that are available through the various grants that go on around the Midwest and in the state of Indiana. So I'm super happy to be here with you guys and answer allow the panelists to answer all of your questions around LFPA and how it is happening in your state. And I will kick it off first to Denise. Introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm happy to be here today. I am Denise Jamerson. I'm from Southern Indiana, and I am the Indiana LFPA Program Manager, and I help with overseeing the LFPA program throughout the state of Indiana.
Okay, Tom.
Yeah, hi, everybody. Glad to be here. I'm Tom Priest from the state of Michigan. I've worked for the state about 12 years, mostly with TFAP and CSFP food programs with the USDA, but also with school meal programs. And I am working with LFPA, and our LFPA contractor, Amy Vasily, is also in the room with me. But yeah, we've really enjoyed this program and the opportunity to share how we did it in Michigan.
Thank you, Tom. Michaela.
Thanks, Portia. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michaela, and I am here representing Illinois Extension today. My title is Outreach Associate, and in that role, I have been supporting technical assistance efforts for LFPA in Illinois. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for coming.
Thank you, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Anderson Mooney. I live in Southwest Wisconsin. I'm working with Marble Seed to administer LFPA to Wisconsin farmers, with an emphasis myself on meat producers, but also working with a lot of veg and value-added producers as well. Also, really excited to be here, and I really want to hear more about how the program has worked all around the Midwest.
Thank you. Thank you guys for the introductions. And I'm just going to get started with some of the questions. So the first question we have is, and this is for all of you, take about a minute to respond, is can you provide an overview of how the LFPA program was implemented in each of your states? And also, if you can, highlight some goals and some priorities in your state in your LFPA rollout. Whoever wants to go first. Tom, go ahead. Oh, I think you're muted.
I certainly was. So, hi. So yeah, so here in Michigan, when we got word of LFPA, we decided to put out a request for letters of grant interest. And so we sent out to all our known partners and in a couple different formats where agencies we weren't currently working with would find the information. So we got 22 responses and selected 8 of them to join us for LFPA as sub-agencies. In the initial funding, we were able to fully fund 2 of our agencies that we accepted into the grant, but the other ones we all only partially funded them because we didn't have enough money to stretch. When LFPA Plus came along, we actually had all of our agencies redo their budgets to move all the admin to the ARPA funds and leave most of the food to the CCC funds, because you can spend ARPA on food, but you don't want to spend all your admin money on food and have no admin. So that was a little bit of effort to get that all put together. But we got through it. When we got LFPA Plus, we were able to fully fund all our partners and actually expand on how we were funding our state's food bank network, which was great. And so goals and priorities, we wound up with, we of course wanted to get the disengaged, disenfranchised farmers and producers involved. We've done really well with that. More than half of our farmers are in those categories. We wanted to have LFPA in every county in Michigan. Michigan has 83 counties, and we have 2 peninsulas, so that was a lot of ground to cover. But I'm happy to say that we have distributions in all 83 counties, and we have purchases in 70 out of 83 counties. So over the last 2 years, we've really grown that to work out very well. And then we just wanted to make sure that we were connecting our sub-agencies. So we have monthly outreach meetings. And so we all get together, and it was really encouraging after, during our first couple meetings, our partners who've never maybe worked with each other were sharing resources and ideas and kind of building our own little community, which has really, over the past 2 years, played out really well for us because we have that natural comfort with each other. And then all of our sub-agencies have their comfort with their local farmers, and that connects all the dots, because sitting in a state office, sometimes surprisingly, not anyone wants to talk to the guy from the state, but he certainly trusts the agency that's been ordering from them or that they know, face to face. So yeah, it's been fun building this network, and it's really worked out well. We have lots of different styles, and they all work great for where they are.
Portia, you're muted.
Sorry. Thank you for sharing, Tom. Sarah, could you share next? Oh, now you're muted. You're muted down.
Sorry, my dog was barking and I apologize for that. Here in Wisconsin, we followed 2 tracks. We had a direct to farmer grant that ranged from $5,000 to $20,000, and then a direct to a community partner track that funded food access partners to buy directly from farmers. So between Marble Seed, Wisconsin Farmers Union, DATCAP, our Department of Ag Trade and Consumer Protection, and the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative that handled logistics and transportation, we have had this dual track working for the last 2 years. And yeah, the collaboration allowed us to do an Marble Seed, especially a lot of farmer TA and education. We focused a lot on wholesale readiness throughout the season, so that the food that the Food Hub Cooperative picked up was packaged very, I don't want to say uniformly, but in a standardized sort of way, so that this year we had very few rejections from food access partners, the food pantries around the state. Felt like that was a huge success. Yeah, so my job here has been working with the direct to farmer track primarily, but we've been on task, and contracts are getting fulfilled, and it's really been satisfying to see the impact that this has had on farmers being able to scale up and to work into a better wholesale sort of a position to stabilize their farms. So yeah, that's about yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you. Denise, may you share?
Sure. In Indiana, what we did is that we have two tracks also. We did a lot of when LFPA came out, we did a community of practice with everybody in the state who would be wanting to be a partner in the LFPA. And from that, we did a track where we worked with the food banks, and the food banks were with feeding with Gleaners and Fresh Connect, who works directly with the farmers. And the farmers were able to start building relationships with the food banks because they delivered directly to the food banks, which kind of lowered the bar for the farmers to be able to take their produce to the food banks without a lot of issues on packaging and things of that nature. The food banks were able to accept those, which like I said was a plus for the farmers. In the first year, with the track one, in the second year, we more than tripled the farmers that participated because the program was running so smoothly with the track one. And it also is letting the farmers and the food banks have relationships for the future. And then on track two, what we did is we broke it into the regions over the state so that it could touch all 92 counties. And we used one organization within those 5 regions to bring together, like each region had 20 counties that they would cover in their area. And those lead organizations would work with direct to the farmers. And so in Indiana, that has given some of the lead organizations, we were intentional about using BIPOC lead agencies so that they could create and help the other BIPOC and underserved farmers. Whereas in track one, we expanded it a little bit further, a little bit more broadly on who could participate in track one. But in track two, we tried to use a focal on the BIPOC community, BIPOC leads, in order for them to be able to grow, number one, and number two, be able to start connecting those farmers in those regions with this program. So the same with LFPA Plus, we just kind of gave them a little bit more and to purchase the food, and use the other for the admin to help grow their organizations, as well as partnering with the other farmers in their region. So it is overall, it's been working really well. As you know, we're at the point now to where we're reassessing and trying to build and trying to create that whole state regional food business system within Indiana.
Thank you, Denise. Michaela?
This is so great. I'm really enjoying hearing about the surrounding states and how it's operating for y'all. So Illinois, between LFPA and LFPA Plus, received over $28 million. So when we received that pretty life food system changing level of funding, we decided to do listening sessions throughout the state. So we hosted 30 listening sessions. We had over 300 food system folks attend to tell us what they wanted to see that money spent on. And we really used the feedback from Illinois food system folks to shape how the program rolled out in the state. So because of that, we were a little bit late to the game in rolling out, and we're pretty early in our LFPA journey. I think we're about a little over 6 months in, but the way that we structured the program based off of feedback and also the quantity of money that we received, is every region, lead agencies could apply to serve specific regions of Illinois. Our lead agencies are sort of acting like project managers for their region. So they are the sub-awardees from the state. Our lead agencies are then responsible for deciding which farmers to work with, deciding which community partners to distribute their food with, and with support from Illinois Extension across all parts of that journey. So farmers, of course, can get involved. They're selling their products directly to the lead agencies, and then our community-based organizations that were interested in participating were connected with lead agencies in their region to help with that distribution of food. So our main goals for rolling out the funding were that lead agencies and organizations of all sizes could be lead agencies and all types. So we have food banks participating, which is pretty classic, but we also have for-profit local food aggregators distributing. We have small food nonprofits that are focused more on the farmer education. So we really have a pretty big diversity in terms of just size of lead agency and also what they primarily do in their communities, which I think has been really unique and really great. We also prioritized sourcing from socially disadvantaged growers and producers. So in order to participate in the program, you had to meet one of our socially disadvantaged criteria, which included BIPOC growers, women-owned growers, also veteran-owned, beginning farmer and ranchers, and then more like geographic. So if you're more than 50 miles from a nearest distribution point, the full list is on our website if you're interested. And I think our last priority is that we wanted to remain flexible for the distribution models in place. So, the classic example, I think, is funneling that food through a food pantry, which is great. And I think it really unlocks a lot of access to fresh, high quality produce for food pantries they might not otherwise have access to. But we are seeing prescription produce boxes as part of this program, mobile markets as part of this program, as well as food boxes. So yeah, it's been really great, and I'm really excited to see where we are year 2.
Thank y'all for sharing. As someone who also works closely with folks who are either being served or served with the LFPA project in Indiana, I love to hear the diversity of how you guys are getting these resources into farmers' hands. So thank you for the work that you're doing. So in your particular areas, what have been some highlights or successes through this program? I'm gonna start this time with Michaela.
Sure. So I think one of our biggest successes so far has been the involvement of organizations of all types and sizes. It's allowed for really creative uses of LFPA funding that I personally would have never thought of. And I think it's really kind of strengthened our value chain coordination skills across the state. It's made it easier for smaller farms to participate who maybe wouldn't be able to meet the quantities required from something like a food bank. And it's also allowed for our smaller organizations to really tailor LFPA and its funding to more uniquely meet the needs of their specific communities. So I think an example is one of our lead agencies in Illinois is Farmers Rising. They're really focused on providing support for beginning farmers, and they typically do not do any food distribution. So this was, quite a jump and quite a flex in their food transportation and value chain coordination skills. But they're making it work, and they have started to use this funding as we go into winter. They're going to support farmers through LFPA that are interested in dabbling in season extension, and supporting farmers financially, right, with that funding. They're also holding a collaborative crop planning session with their farmers and their food pantries that they're distributing to, which is really, sort of exactly what I would dream of coming out of this program, in that our community partners are directly telling our farmers like what sorts of products that their neighbors really want to see. So that, just an example of how it's been really awesome to see such unique versions of this project emerge. We've also had our farmers really start to see this as a wholesale readiness 101, which Sarah Mooney kind of alluded to, which has been really neat. And we've had farmers really start to expand in a way that they would not have been able to without LFPA funds. And I think the last thing that's been really neat to see is and when we started and did the listening sessions, farmers seem to know farmers and our food access staff seem to know food access staff. But there really wasn't that sort of interconnection between the two. And this program is really providing a way and a platform for folks to start building that sort of interconnection that's needed for a resilient food system.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, no, that's all great. We had some unique experiences we didn't expect. More than a handful of farmers letting us know that they were close to closing things down. Like the difference from last season to the season they got involved with LFPA was life-changing. Amy and I got to visit a blueberry farm that was a multi-generational farm going into its fourth generation of teenagers working there in the summertime. And they said, yeah, they were reached out to the local food connection that wound up being an LFPA connection about buying whatever product they had left. And they were able to sell it that first year and to the LFPA. And this year they let us know that they had no extra anything at the end of their crop season, that they were able to funnel it through LFPA. And in the meantime, during our visit, extra family has come back home. They bought a 10-acre farm across the street. They're expanding. So we have a handful of great stories like that of how life-changing the program is for the farmers, but also how grateful the local communities are to have this fresh produce and all this local things coming their way. So I mentioned before, our partners are very different in how they're doing things. And if you're familiar with Michigan, we all point to our hand and go, I live here. But in the thumb area of Michigan, we have a partner that's putting food boxes on local transit. So the buses running through town have LFPA food on there. And if you need food, you can pick it up from the bus. Instead of going to the food's coming to you. So that's great. Our food bank partners up in the UP, Upper Peninsula, they have delivery programs going. A lot of focus on seniors, people that can't get to the food, so making sure they can get that extra. So that's been great. Some of our partners use the farmers market model, and they have some of our partners have mobile farmers markets that they bring to neighborhoods, and it's all LFPA goods. So you don't have to worry about which table at the market has the LFPA or has the readily available food. So that's been great. And then something creative another partner did is they create harvest kit boxes where they have all the ingredients to make a meal, and then instructions on how to make that meal, and it's enough food to feed 8 people 2 times. So they kind of create this. It's like a normalcy of this program. Like that's something you do with any food. You'd sit down with a meal, you'd have a recipe, and so they're educating, especially if it's something that might be unique that participants aren't used to getting in their kitchen. So all those things. I mean, it's fun. Amy and I get to go out at least once a quarter and see things in person, which has been great because we do all the paperwork. We want to see how it's all out in the real world. So no, that's been game changing. And having been with TFAP and CSFP for my time with the state, those are great programs, but TFAP used to have a lot of bonus products that came through, not so much after a pandemic. The systems kind of changed and a lot of that doesn't happen like it used to. And CSFP is a very structured box for seniors, and it's all shelf stable. So when it comes to adding fresh fruit and vegetables, we have 2 of our partners, one's a food bank and one's a community action agency. They run those programs as well, but now they can double up and put LFPA with those products. And, our participants can go to one stop and pick up food from 3 or 4 different programs. That's amazing for that person getting all that food instead of driving all over town or day up, Tuesday this week, Wednesday next week, you got to make multiple trips. So we love the overlap we're seeing with other programs that LFPA really helps. We get double the effect by putting things together. It's been great.
Okay. Sarah. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry, thought I had her there. Right. Echoing on a lot of what Tom just said, that we were able to building upon studies of food insecurity that were done in Wisconsin, built out routes to all the corners of the state, to all the food access partners interested in receiving food in these 9 regions that were defined in the state. Doing that, we also, we were able to help 236 small scale producers. And we hit a lot of procurement goals that we had set for ourselves. In doing that, those reliable guaranteed sales that we were able to, have to the farmers took so much stress out of their day-to-day work around the farm so that they could focus on producing the best that they could do, building their businesses, and take advantage of the educational opportunities that were extended through the LFPA and Marble Seed. So we had all these amazing in-person events, virtual events, and then a lot of relationship building and peer-to-peer learning that were built out just naturally. It was really great to see the connections being made as farmers who often were market farmers, learned about not just what LFPA had to offer, but through the peer-to-peer contact, so much more opportunity that was available to them. Especially since, we were working, we had a goal of serving or working with 80% historically underserved farmers. And yeah, we blew that right out of the water. And and then additionally, providing the transport for the food with our cooperation with the Wisconsin Food Hub Cooperative allowed farmers just to focus on creating a really good product to be picked up and delivered with a cold chain all the way to the pantry. And in a way that was supported by the program, Food Hub and Food Hub delivered packaging that was purchased in bulk for farmers. So the farmers were allowed to place orders for wax coated boxes, produce boxes and bags through a local produce auction. Food Hub then delivered those boxes, really slashing the packaging costs for farmers, and providing a really good way to get that food to its recipients in good condition. One of the really important aspects to a lot of farmers that cut their packaging costs by more than 50%. And then reaching out with language support, we are allowed to, Hmong and Spanish speaking farmers were comfortable working within the program, and which led to more culturally relevant food getting to the communities that wanted it. Providing the, food with dignity was a huge focus. That, this wasn't discarded food, and this wasn't, just random selections at the pantry. It was first quality, culturally relevant, and fresh, nutritious food. A huge impact on the farmers. They loved hearing how well received their food was. They loved knowing where their food went. It really was really satisfying, and it gave a lot of farmers good cause to double down and commit to even more. Huge,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you. Denise?
It all sounds so great. And I can kind of say ditto to a lot of the stuff that is happening with the LFPA and you guys' states along with ours is that what we've seen is some of the successes of the creative ways for the distribution and being able to identify and serve the communities that are left behind, by using the different lead agencies. They are, are boots on the ground to really know their communities, their counties, to be able to be more creative about who gets served. And it also, in a sense, gives the farmers a voice also. For us, it was able to give the farmers a voice on who they have been serving and who really needs to be served, and being able to ensure that those communities are getting their produce, because when we did it in a regional way, then that's kind of helping them to also be identified as farmers within their regions, like the senior homes. And in Indiana, we have a lot of rural communities, which, when you talk about underserved, a lot of people think about the urban areas, but we're able to also touch those rural areas too, and the seniors and the homes that are there. We also were able to, like Tom, get meals and make recipes out of a box. And then we only not only did we do the boxes, but we also created the meals from those boxes and gave them recipes along with the food that goes in those boxes, because we are able to identify um, where things are lacking for people with the fresh food. So they may get the box, but they don't know what to do with the box. So by putting, not only cooking the food, but also putting recipes in those boxes also helps them. We also, some of the successes is, again, saving the farms, being able to help these farmers to be encouraged to continue what they're doing, because this has allowed us to address the real needs of those small farmers, like you're saying, the packaging, reducing some of those costs for them as a collective, whatever they need for sustainability as they grow, so that they can grow. Some of them are just not just market, but they are market farmers, and there's a lot of technical assistant needs that I think have been overlooked, that we've been able to kind of look at and start honing in on addressing that. For the food is medicine, we've been able to partner in some of the regions with the county health offices and give education on the food that the people are getting. So for us, it's all about tapping into that educational piece also, from the consumer to the farmers. As far as for the farmers, what your products is, how it is helping in this space of healthy eating, and being able to provide their products to them. On our goals, we blew it out of the water too. Like I said, at first, people were kind of reserved about the information. Some of our areas, in track 2, some of our leads got off to a late start because they had to kind of really think about, how are we going to touch these communities? How are we going to reach every community, the transportation and all of that? But after the first year, the farmers that bought in and came on board, we just kind of, skyrocketed with the participants in the program. We also partnering with some of the transportation partners in one of our regions. They was created out of COVID and was in a space of, what do we do now? Because they had a bunch of vans and things, but being a part of the LFPA has helped them to grow and be another asset to our farmers within the region, to pick their produce up and to transport it safely and do things like that. So, uh, like I said, the extension, the farmers rising to another level, and being able to, we're at the point now to where we're really like, how do we adhesive all of this from all across the state to make it a continued success, whether we get other funds or whether we don't, and giving that technical assistance to the farmers, so that they can still participate and still grow and still be relevant.
Thank you. Quick question. I'm just gonna pose it right now since you just concluded from the audience member. Were the boxes and recipes culturally sensitive that Indiana provide?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, most definitely that. And because we have different, I'll just leave it like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next question. I'm gonna start with Sarah because I know you have to skedaddle soon. Or wait, no, that's at 11:30. But I'm still gonna start with you. Um, were there any barriers related to infrastructure, communication, or compliance that you had to overcome?
Well, um, one of our um, one of our biggest struggles was the cold chain requirement that we had set in place. It did create some burdens for farmers, especially those who were at collaborative or community farms, not living where they farmed. Sometimes, waiting for the cold for the truck to arrive. When things get complicated in a logistical way, when a truck can be delayed for many hours, that created some real frustrations there. Then, yeah, I think that was probably our primary drawback, that um, I'm hopeful that we can resolve, because farmers became frustrated when, they had the ability to deliver the food to the pantry, which may have been just a few miles down the road, or in the case of the tribal elder food boxes, where the community members are right there and want to deliver their food, um, and couldn't. But this is something that we're working on, and trying to build, perhaps, a little more flexibility into the program for coming years. Um, yeah, and really that was our biggest stumbling block this year.
Okay. Denise?
I think one of our biggest barriers was just helping them to understand that it's not a competition, it's a collaboration. Um, uh, Across the whole gambit, from the farmers to the organizations. And our purpose is to feed the people. We're here to support the farmers, but we have a mission to do this. And then I think we also had the issue, which we're still trying to work through, is the delivering of the produce. Who can deliver it, who delivers it correctly, and also still trying to find partners in different parts of the state, because we don't have something that's statewide that, could work with all the agencies. So just kind of trying to hone in on that delivery and the training on produce safety handling, because we also had to deal with, if you have somebody who transports, are they transporting it the way the farmers feel as though it should be transported, when they want to do it themselves. So that's just one of the biggest things, but
Okay.
we're working through it.
Michaela, and then Tom.
Sure. So I think it's definitely we've had barriers in infrastructure. Shortly after LFPA started, we had some infrastructure grants come into the state, and there was a lot of asks like, why wasn't it flipped? And conversely, like if we're really focusing on socially disadvantaged farmers or new and beginning farmers, they're not typically farmers that have access to a lot of infrastructure or extra cash to purchase infrastructure needed to participate in programs like this. So I think like had LFPA had a little bit more flexibility and wiggle room to support infrastructure such as cold storage or transportation or even purchasing packaging, I think was a big barrier that came up as well. So certainly infrastructure that was loud and clear even in our listening sessions, and to have no support to kind of get those in place prior to rollout was a bit challenging. Some of our lead agencies were more equipped than others to kind of fill in that gap of infrastructure. So we do have some leads that do have the capacity to pick up directly from their farmers. Our smaller leads do not have that capacity, and so it's required lots of collaboration. In one case, we had a larger farmer work with a smaller neighboring farmer to kind of work as an informal aggregator. So we've seen, creative solutions to the problems we're facing for infrastructure. And cold storage, that's true. The lack of that is a challenge for farmers, but it's also a challenge on our distribution sites as well. Our food pantries are typically used to having to store fresh or frozen meats and produce, and that was maybe a limiting factor in how much they were able to distribute. In terms of communication, I think it's been challenging to get our lead agencies and our farmers on the same page because we're all brand new to this sort of wholesale distribution, particularly in setting those standards of, how frequently will farmers be paid? What are the packaging requirements? How frequently are you going to order products? And I think because of the nature of the Illinois program, it's been challenging to try to standardize that because all of our leads are different, right? So what a food bank needs in terms of packaging is going to be different from what someone doing a food box distribution model will need. And in compliance, 50% of our lead agencies were awarded federal funding for the first time, which is amazing. And that was one of the goals of our funding. But of course, that requires a lot of technical assistance because unsurprisingly, USDA funding is not very easy and there's lots of bureaucratic hoops that you need to comply with. So in partnership with our Department of Human Services, Illinois Extension has provided and needed to provide a lot of that technical assistance in order to make sure that our lead agencies can continue to receive federal funding if they're interested. So it's been great getting everyone up to speed and, providing that extra support for organizations who otherwise maybe would not have felt comfortable accessing federal funding.
Yeah. Here in Michigan, so I think we avoided a barrier by getting our sub-agencies together right off the bat. So everybody got comfortable. It didn't feel like it was competitive. Everybody was cheering each other on, sharing ideas. So that's really worked out well for us because they're all so different. It's not like, they're all playing the same game, but they get to make their own rules. So it's worked out really well that way. We wanted to make sure that if we weren't sure, Amy and I would contact National USDA and just ask, is tea allowable? Is herbs allowable? What's going on with, all these different ideas that are popping up as we run into small producers that kind of have a really unique product they want to share. So we learned that we could do tea. We learned that we could, do other products that maybe were kind of outside of the framework. So that worked really well. Something that caught us off guard was just how protective farmers can be with their personal information and just really listening to how they want to communicate, not just, our idea going in was we'll just make a large database of everybody's contact information and then we'll have that to share with anybody. And the farmers were more comfortable working with their local agency who they have that trust and existing relationship with or growing relationship with. And just, then we reversed the trend that, we learned about an infrastructure grant that was outside of LFPA, but perfect for our farmers in LFPA. So we shared information back through our LFPA network and they got that out for their farmers and producers. Early on, we were asked questions about, can we get seed money ahead of time to grow crops? And we learned that no, the money's only for the final product, not the growing or planting for the product. But we also learned that, they can go to a farm bureau and talk about getting a short-term loan. And so we kind of educated ourselves and then shared that out as well, because if we want them to grow and we're giving them a reason to grow, we were just trying to help, connect them to anything that really could fall into helping them, do well. So in Michigan, we have a 10 cents a meal program, which is if you buy local foods for your school meal program, you get an extra 10 cents of reimbursement per meal. So we've had that for about 8 years now. It started as a small pilot, but now it's across the state. So we're trying to connect our LFPA farmers to that program as well, or any other program that comes up. Our Department of Human Services just got a budget line item for them this year that they have funds to spend on local farmers for local food. So we are sharing that. We want any way that these farmers can get more business, even it's, it's better that they work with multiple grants than rely on just one. And again, moving into whatever's coming next for LFPA and how we plan that out and balance the admin and the food funds, the costs of those things, we're trying to be really proactive in those conversations. So anybody, whether it's our sub agencies or the farmers they work with, nobody's caught off guard if suddenly something changes drastically or we're all just hoping that FMLA just keeps chugging along because we know how great it is. So we hope for the best and kind of have a little plan for the worst, but we're still trying to make sure the best is what we're getting out of everybody. And it's so far so good. We have all the way through September 25 and we got a handshake agreement starting for the next growing season, and that makes it easier for everybody too. It's a lot more relaxed than that first year we jumped in because it was more, what do you have left instead of what can you grow for us?
Yes,
So
yes,
it's been a long learning curve. It's still a learning curve, but it's been good.
yes. Speaking of future LFPA funding, that leads into my next question. With the news of LFPA programming continuing, how do you envision this program evolving to better serve farmers and address food system inequities? And this time, I'm going to start with Michaela.
I think that's a great question. And I think that, in year 2 of our LFPA, I'll be better equipped to answer that question. But based off of what I've heard from our farmers so far, I think that we really, as a state, need to create a solid requirement for farmers to be paid in a specific number of days, and acknowledging that, receiving funding from the USDA, which then trickles through our state agencies, no matter what, it's going to be slow. But also acknowledging that, again, if we're trying to prioritize working with socially disadvantaged farmers, there is a need for building that trust and ensuring that, farmers are getting what they need out of this program for them to be paid in a specific number of days. And we did encourage that, but I think there is a need for a solid requirement on that. In Illinois, we also have a fair market value list, and that has been used as our pricing list for the program. Our lead agencies are required to pay our farmers at least in that minimum value of that range, which is estimated to be at wholesale, if not almost retail prices. And that's something that I have heard mostly good feedback from our farmers, and it's given them, a lot of extra income to reinvest back in their farm. So I think keeping that fair market value list is really important as we move forward. I also would like to explore how we can better support our socially disadvantaged farmers and really meet them where they're at. So I think exploring ways that we can support them with packaging, and whether that's technical assistance in, what does wholesale packaging look like? How many tomatoes to pack per pack? What types of boxes do these tomatoes go in? Providing that technical assistance up front, but then maybe hopefully in tandem with, okay, well, here are the boxes that you need, or at least here are ways that you can access the packaging that you need. And exploring other infrastructure investments. We've heard loud and clear in the state, there is just a huge gap in food system infrastructure. So exploring ways that we can plug our farmers into either LFPA or other grant programs that can support their participation in LFPA.
Thank you. I'm going to now go to Denise, then Sarah, then Tom.
Sure. I agree with us. We did from the very beginning. Well, yeah, we tried to come up with a price list that was used all across the state, just so that we can ensure that the farmers are getting, the fair price and some, so that they can invest that back into their businesses. We definitely have identified numerous gaps with the small farmers and the socially disadvantaged farmers and the assistance that they need, so that just getting them to the point, like someone said earlier, that they don't totally depend on one source of funding, but being able to connect them and prepare them and help them to stabilize themselves so that they can be qualified for other funding that is available for them and to them throughout the state. So that's pretty much for us.
Sarah, do you and then Tom?
Right, echoing on the pricing, we contracted with farmers and we set prices and for every product that they would contribute to the program. And I think in the future, it would be nice to see that being a little more standardized. Like I said, we're not quite sure how the program's going to shape out for the next year, but these are things, that are top of mind. But we also want to like build on what has happened in the last 2 years with the program, tying producers to more opportunities, the food to schools, food to institutions, so that they're not dependent on one. And as they grow their operations, they can also, participate in these other revenue streams that are fair and appreciative of their efforts, and will help them grow their farm. Then I think what another process we'd like to do is simplifying our operations with so many partners involved, playing on the strengths of every organization. Sometimes producers and food access partners were confused about who to reach out to for a specific concern. And oftentimes what happened is they found their favorite point of contact, and whether it was the right point of contact or not, they would just kind of just slow up the resolution of a problem by starting in the wrong place and then rerouting. So creating a, a simplified process, greater ease of use for producers and end users of the product, are one of our primary goals. And then just building um, on that culturally relevant foods going to the communities, and more food going to communities that have greater food insecurity. In Wisconsin, we're separated, these regions, by just vast stretches of real estate, which is forested, very lightly populated, but in, um, way underserved as far as per capita food security. So solving some of those distribution issues, I think, will be a huge part of the program moving forward.
Yeah, similar to some things that's already been said. So definitely fair pricing for the farmers. They certainly appreciate that. Anybody's business model that exists by somebody paying you the least they can for your product is certainly a disadvantage to anybody on one side of that conversation. Our blueberry farm partners, when we visited, said when he went around to sell his blueberries to the larger blueberry farms, he was getting pennies on the dollar offered. And so the fact that the community agency that was hooked in with LFPA was more than glad to pay him a fair price. And again, that should not be the exception to the rule. So really, this program allowed people in the community food business to be in charge of making decent offers for crops, whether they're whatever's left or you're planning for next season. So that definitely builds trust. You don't see someone trying to take advantage of your situation. It's still good product. It's still needed, so that's something we like out of this program. When it comes to the changing in the funding, we have one food bank and one community action agency. They get limited funds for TFAP and CSFP. There's never enough in those funds to totally cover the cost of those programs either. So we know we know the structure of how food programs can work traditionally. We want to do a lot and we only get so much funding. So with it just being CCC funds moving into the next round of funding, Michigan's model is we use both of those side by side. We use our ARPA funds to cover the admin, like I said at the beginning of the session, and then we use the CCC to buy as much food as we can, take care of it, and get it where it needs to go. So we have our partners go from our biggest partner to a new partner that it was very grassroots. We have our food bank council that has 7 food banks that cover the entire state. And that's been great because once we got the extra LFPA plus and rejuggled the budgets, our food bank partner said, any county that's not covered by anybody else in this program, we will make it our job to cover that county. So that gave us a lot of leeway. But we also have an agency that needs advance payments because they can't buy any food until somebody puts some money in their hand. And so as a state, I've never worked with a program where we were giving anybody advance payments for anything. So we worked with our finance team, got that straightened out, and they're one of our more successful examples of what can happen with just an idea and a couple people that actually want to, create something for their community. So that's been great. So yeah, so not having that admin funding covered would definitely change our network because, if you remember the original ask for LFPA was find a new way to do this, find new partners, create new distribution routes, provide something that respects the farmers that normally don't get the business and aren't normally involved in large scale growing or purchasing. In Michigan, we put it like everybody else on the screen, we all put it together for whatever worked with it. They gave us a lot of broad, no barriers, some barriers. It is a government grant, but we could make it to what's just about anything we wanted. And everybody talking today has explained none of our states have exactly the same thing going on. And my fear would be we built it on both funding being available. And if you take away one, the program doesn't work. Doesn't matter which one. Take away the food funds, you're not going to get much done. Take away the admin, you're not going to get much done. So I'm really hoping the conversation shifts towards, funding those things together again. Being in Michigan, I knew how we did it, but hearing how when LFPA Plus came out, other states just moved it on to another, new agencies and new efforts. And for us, we just fully funded everything we put together. So our plan was a little bit off track, but it really worked out great with the way the funding landed. So fingers crossed, whatever you got to do to hope for something. But yeah, I really hope the conversation swings that way.
Okay. I'm gonna try to squeeze in one last question or two before we get to the Q&A section, where the audience can ask questions. So, but what are some actions that farmers and food business owners can take to prepare for participating in LFPA or comparable programs? We're gonna start with Sarah, and then go Michaela, and then Denise, and then Tom.
Well, one of the um, things that we asked farmers to do early on while we were setting prices was to project exactly how they were going to hit their target, their contract target. We spent a lot of time just write down crop by crop, how many row feet in some cases, and how many cases will you produce? So how many boxes do you need to order? So you're all put together at the beginning of the year, even with the challenges that every growing season brings, you're going to be more prepared to shift when you need to, so that you can make those adjustments and still be successful within the program, meeting the needs. Because we had talked to food pantries going into the year saying, what do you want more of? What do you want less of? What do you want the same? And we were steering farmers away from, things where there's just an overabundance of perhaps more challenging foods, or just not culturally relevant foods. So pushing them to the crops that are in higher demand. and then having backup plans. But doing that work, which a lot of small scale farmers kind of just left to chance, made a huge impact, I think, and got more of the right food to the right people, and yeah, help more farmers get more out of the program than they would have without them.
All right, I think I was next.
Mhm.
So I think one really concrete way to start preparing for programs like this, if you're interested as either a farmer or food business owner, is to start taking basic food safety trainings.
Mm.
In our state, we required that all of our growers had at least a basic food safety training. So that did include things like GAP or the Produce Safety Alliance training, but we also offered a 2-hour produce safety boot camp for growers, and we offered sessions virtually, in person. We also have an online course that is still open and is free. And it's just a really great introduction to what you need to keep in mind as a grower as you start to, provide food to people. Especially in programs like this where you're serving underserved communities, food safety is just critically important. And frankly, any type of program like this is going to require at least basic food safety knowledge. Certainly, there's always room to build on that. So, as I mentioned, I think the pathway would be sort of like an intro produce safety boot camp. Once you're kind of have a grip on that, moving on to a Produce Safety Alliance training, which is moving from a 2-hour training to a 2-day training and starting to incorporate those practices like building a food safety plan, um, starting to do some of the tracking that's required in terms of like building plans for hand washing and hand washing stations. And then your third level, maybe looking at, is GAP a right fit for your farm? Certainly, if you're looking into getting into wholesale long term, GAP is definitely something that should be on your radar, but GAP is not something that you can typically do in a year, especially if you're a new farmer. So food safety, if you're not growing produce, I think there are still opportunities to keep food safety in mind and explore food safety. Just make sure that you're meeting the state and federal requirements for your product. It's going to be different depending if you are a meat producer or if you produce honey. There's also regulations that differ in like how much you're producing. So really look into that. Make sure you're following the state regulations for labeling, that sort of thing. Crop planning, I think, is a nice skill to start bolstering earlier the better. Again, especially if you're looking into getting into wholesale markets longer term. So having an estimate of what type of product, how much that product you'll have, and about when you'll have that product. And I think folks in this space know that farming, it will never be exact. The seasons change depending on the summer and the growing season. So, but even having an estimate of I will have X amount of tomatoes by, July or August is really, really helpful for schools or food banks that are maybe looking to procure product from you. And I think the last, maybe most important is start building relationships now. So show up to food system spaces in your state, attend mixers like this. We have the Everything Local conference here in Illinois, which is really the food system conference in the state. The Chicago Food Justice Summit, sign up for newsletters, meet other farmers, because this work is really, really, really relational. And someone in my role, I can't advocate for you if I don't know you and I don't know your story. In terms of meeting other farmers, there's mentorship that can come from that. There's collaboration. Hey, you live 5 minutes down the road from me. Let's aggregate. So you take it to the food bank one week, I'll take it to the food bank next week. And really that relationship building is just so, so important for generally food system work, but I think particularly for programs like this.
Thank you, Michaela. Go ahead, Denise, and then Tom, and then we're gonna open up for Q&A.
Okay, great. I totally agree with what the Sarah and Michaela said, especially the networking and partnerships and collaborations. Also, I feel as though in that encompasses information. Stay in the know on what's really going on in the farm and agriculture arena and the opportunities that that exist for the small and socially disadvantaged farmers. I also feel as though, you know, the food plan, the crop plan, food safety, but I also feel as though that they need to hone in on securing their business, because a lot of them don't see their farms as businesses, you know, and I'm talking about the record keeping, your business basics on what you would need in order to, you know, if you need extra funding, if you need to go to FSA, if you need to go, you know, when you apply for a grant, you still need good record keeping. So along with your crop planning, come with your record keeping and being able to know, you know, your profit margins and what's a good crop to grow and the profits for it if you're not in a position to be in an LFPA program, but use this opportunity with the LFPA to shore up your businesses, you know, and your business foundation. I also feel as though the being able to a part of shoring up is being a part of the programs to sustain your growing practices, like your NRCS programs, like your climate smart programs, you know, getting the equipment and things that you need in order to sustain the farm, sustain your growing practice. So as you do grow, that stuff is already in place to help you to it helps strengthen your farm and your products. So yeah, that's I think that is very key to them growing and being able to participate even further and the sustainability of their growing and their farms.
Yep, Tom, we got about 3 minutes until Q&A, but you can
Yep.
have a
Yeah,
thank you.
no. So I would say for the farmers, be flexible. You're connected to a program, maybe more than one, and there's always, well, hopefully there's always another program coming your way. So be open-minded and you know, I mean, I think a lot of people are getting good feelings from how LFPA is run and what it's done for their personal situation. So yeah, stay connected. Communication came up a lot. You know, you got to be connected if you want to know about things and if you want to be involved. So there's that. Just the idea of you can expand, you know, for farmers and to be successful, you have to be good at the idea that you don't need 10 more acres of land if you can make better use of the land you have. You don't have to have the extra expense, but you can still get the extra work done. Our blueberry farmers are talking about planting herbs in between the blueberries because they all need the same type of soil. So those two things can exist side by side. You don't need another 10 acres. You got those 10 acres hiding between your plants you already got in the ground. So just that creativity and just the idea that, you know, you can build off of success, you can invest in I like Denise mentioned how, you know, this is a business. You know, everyone can work all year round and be exhausted and get all the food out the door, but making a profit, you got to be able to figure out how all the things you did to create that crop to are you covering that cost so you can do it again next year. And you shouldn't just be breaking even. You got to obviously take care of yourself and then take care of what your future plans are for that farm. So yeah, and the best way it is you hear every option that's coming your way. You have connections that can help keep you informed on what's coming your way. Yeah, that's probably one of the best things that's come out of LFPA in Michigan is that we have a whole new connected group of people. We had our Amish farmers by Detroit. We're talking about doing organic and needing, you know, they don't use pesticides, and our blueberry farmers use garlic and they make it into a spray because bugs hate garlic. And our office was able to connect the multi-generational, multicultural farmer family over by the south side of Michigan to the Amish farmers on the other side of Michigan. And that felt really good because they would have never crossed paths or never shared information. So it's the little things like that that make it feel really good when you get to do it.
Thank y'all so much for sharing all of your experiences and answering the questions so completely. I wanted to let y'all get y'all answers out completely as possible. So thank you for sharing that. So we're going to transition over to the Q&A section. The first question I have, and feel free, whoever can answer it, but if you could keep it brief, we don't have that much time until it's over. was from an audience member. The question is, was there an increase in CSAs for farmers as a result of the program? Anyone can answer. Did anyone see an increase in folks selling or having or creating CSAs as a direct result of LFPA at all in your states?
You know, we had a couple of we had a couple of farmers introduce CSA boxes that they delivered to the program, which were wildly successful, but that had been their model before. In fact, I saw more farmers move away from CSA and into a more of a wholesale presentation or model for their food.
Okay. Anyone else?
We saw the switch to different packaging, higher volume packaging, and going to that kind of a wholesale like a hub, and then moving the food from there because that did help farmers lower their cost on how they could provide that food.
Okay, thank you for sharing. The next question is, did anyone see farmers shift their focus from some of their traditional markets to LFPA? In other words, how did markets shift when LFPA came on board?
I think that's a great question, Liz. And from what I've heard from some of the farmers I've spoken with so far is we've seen a general shift from away from farmers markets into LFPA. And I think for the farmers themselves, it's been a matter of just cultivating a better work-life balance because farmers markets can be very time intensive and they're very weather dependent. So, if you're a farmer, you're maybe driving 2+ hours from Michigan to get to the Chicago farmers market. And then maybe it's a rainy day, so you have way less attendance at the farmers market and you have to pay your staff at the farmers market a living wage. So you might not even be making money that day. And then you have all this product that you're not selling potentially that you now have to figure out what to do with. Maybe you're composting it, maybe you're donating it to a food pantry, depending on the product. So some of our farmers have shifted away from farmers markets that they were previously doing into LFPA because for now, LFPA provides them better work-life balance. And it's also just been for now, it's been a more stable market, but acknowledging that the funding does have a deadline at this time.
Michigan had a startup farmer, husband and wife farmers that approached a local agency prior to LFPA saying, we'd like to grow food for your programs. And once LFPA came into play, that agency was able to say, we order from them first. They're our first supplier. And then if it's something they don't have, we'll check around. But they really created this mutually equal arrangement that they're dedicated to the success of the other. So that was really unique to find that out, that it started before LFPA, but LFPA certainly brought it to the next level with the amount of funding they could put through that farm.
Yeah, and similarly, we had from year 1 to year 2, and then even from the beginning of this year to now, farmers who had a crop list that was 2 pages long, pare it down and down and down to the things that they knew they could do well, they knew that were welcomed, and they knew that they would be able to get a better return on their investment to help their farm succeed. So like has been said time and again too, like the planning and then being able to look back because you've done your planning, being able to reflect upon what made you money and what did not.
I think one other thing I would add into the mix is that farmers just genuinely love the mission of this program. So they're really, really energized about the idea of serving, one, their direct community, but then also serving members of their community that otherwise would not be able to receive their food because farmers have to make a profit. And for farmers to make a profit, they're not able to typically sell their products at a price that would be accessible for underserved community members. So they really, really just just have so much joy and passion for serving this program and serving the community members from this program. And I think that that has also kind of led to some of the shifting of the markets.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add to that question? If not, I can move on to the next one.
And I apologize, I'm gonna have to jump off.
Well,
But
nice. Sarah, can
yeah,
you drop your contact information in the chat before you go? And
yeah, I did that a little
okay,
earlier, so it'll be up toward the top. So thanks, everybody.
thank you. So the next question is, does anyone have any information about online GAP certification?
Yeah, so the Cornell website is a good resource. They have a Produce Safety Alliance track that I think if you're interested in exploring GAP, the Produce Safety Alliance training is a really necessary stepping stone, and it'll equip you with the tools that you need to eventually get GAP certified. So the Produce Safety Alliance training goes through how to develop a food safety plan. You can't get GAP certified without a food safety plan. It'll go through mock auditing. So if you, as a farmer, if you bring your food to, if you're selling your food to a community, you have to be able to track what part of your field that item grew from. And the GAP, in order to get GAP certification, you have to be able to do mock audits. So take that Produce Safety Alliance training. Everything local in Illinois, if you're an Illinois farmer, will have a Produce Safety Alliance training offered for free at no cost. Otherwise, Cornell is the university behind the Produce Safety Alliance training. So check their website for additional virtual offerings. That next tier of actually getting GAP certification it's not a class, but you can take like the Produce Safety Alliance training will help get you to that. And the GAP certification requires you to pass a pretty rigorous audit in order to actually receive that GAP certification. And in the Produce Safety Alliance training, there will also provide more information on, how much does that audit cost? You have to renew that GAP certification every year. It'll also go through different options such as group GAP, which might be a better fit if you have farmers also nearby that are maybe ready for that next step. So yeah, Cornell website is the short answer. Produce Safety Alliance training is the second short answer.
Michaela, can I jump in here real quick? If I can, Portia, without being disruptive. The University of Illinois, in Illinois, Matson, they're having a training November the 7th and the 8th. I believe that the Farm Bureau is helping with the funding of it. And so if you got $25, you could take the test from them. Okay. For the class.
Thanks for sharing, Carmen.
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Carmen. Okay, well, I have one question for you guys. If you had one piece of advice for farmers looking to engage more deeply with LFPA programs in your area, what would it be?
Can you repeat that, Portia? I got distracted
Oh,
for a
I'm
second.
sorry.
No,
I
that's
said
me.
if you had one piece of advice for farmers looking to engage more deeply with LFPA in your state, what would it be?
Oh, I'd say reach out to your local agency that deals in fresh food and other fresh products. We've like I said a little bit ago, we learned that they certainly trust the people nearby just because that's comfortable. There's a relationship there. But the idea of reaching out to an entire state is a little bit intimidating. And also, once you give that information, you don't control it any longer. So I think the farmers are being realistic that they know what their farm can produce. They know what the relationship, how they want it to go, and they probably get most of that out of the local people that they can connect with face to face and on a regular basis. So yes, I think it's just important that they want to that they do that the farmers that, you know, that's how they pursue anything, start locally and then build off that. And if you feel more comfortable as you learn about this grant went well, another grant got you something. We had the husband and wife farmers, they got a grant and bought 200-foot hoop houses to expand the type of things they could grow. So, you know, they're getting, you know, that was, again, not because of the LFPA grant, but at least their mindset was, what's out there? What grants can we connect? How can we grow this farm and do it with a grant rather than a loan? So, you know, if you, that's a good way to get ahead, is if you can figure out other ways to pay for it instead of, you know, taking out a loan. They're going to be much more sustainable planning that way than just, you know, running out to buy something themselves, or maybe just saying we can't afford that right now. We just have to, you know, we have to wait. So yeah, and again, once they're comfortable with one partner, I think that really brings them into the world where they could be more comfortable with others.
Yeah, and I think one piece of advice I would give for farmers interested in local procurement programs like LFPA is that although the pricing for LFPA is really amazing, as Denise pointed out, it's a business. Farming is a business, and any business should have diverse income streams. So I would really advise against putting all of your eggs in the LFPA basket because, you know, the funding at this time is not permanent. It will end. So if you're scaling up, banking on LFPA continuing, you know, you're not setting yourself up for success. Also, as I mentioned before, USDA funding can take, I mean, the cash flow is slow. That's just the nature of this type of programming. So if you're relying on that cash flow to, you know, pay your employees, pay yourself, make that loan payment, it really, really is helpful to diversify your income streams. So I think treating LFPA as like a nice juicy cherry on top to maybe some of the other initiatives that you're working on, I think is a smart way to go about these types of programs.
Denise, do you have anything to add? Because I got one more question before we wrap up.
Not really. I agree with both of them, and to reach out to your local people who are administering the LFPA program, or, you know, I'm sure that they know other farmers that are within the program to kind of hear about it, but reach out to your local leads and kind of work your way up from there if you don't get your questions answered in order to see what it takes to be involved.
Thank you, guys. So our last question of this panel is, are there any programs for urban farmers?
I know in Michigan, yes, we at least have the 10 cents a meal program, which is that school meal program that's available to local farmers if they're all local schools have the option to take part in it. Most schools do. A lot of schools use it to buy milk because they can spend down all the funds. They get a fair share out of the amount of money that Michigan makes available. But otherwise, other produce, other local fresh products can be purchased as well. So yeah, I know that for sure. As far as federal programs that maybe come and go, we've seen a lot over the last 5 years how money was put into the food pipeline, and we had, you know, some programs came for a year or two and then drifted away as the demand changed or got funneled through other programs. But yeah, I'd say it's always worth looking, and maybe Denise or Michaela would be more familiar about where do you look to find out about those other programs. But you know, there's definitely, I'm sure there's sites available to where you can check the list yourself from time to time. It's good to be connected. Somebody's reaching out to you, but also it's good to know where to find that information yourself. So either one of you, if you want to plug in that information, I don't have that.
Yeah, I would say, Carmen, if you're in Illinois and in an urban area, I would say please reach out to me directly and I'll do what I can to plug you into the programs that I'm aware of. I will say that LFPA is open to urban farmers, and in Illinois, we're open to farmers of all sizes. So, you know, we have farmers growing on a quarter of an acre that are in the program, and we have farmers that are growing on hundreds of acres in the program. So LFPA is available to farmers of all sizes, rural or urban. In Chicago, particularly, there are some grants that are coming out specifically for urban farmers. So I just dropped a link to the I Am Chai grant in the chat. And there's also a grant that CIFPAC is actually managing, which is called the GFPI, Good Food Purchasing Initiative Community Fund. Definitely look into that grant. It's maybe one of the most flexible and accessible grant programs that I've seen. And it would be a good fit for any urban farmer that's interested in eventually supplying institutional markets.
I would say, you know, there's a lot of programs, and there's a lot of programs coming down the pipeline. There's food as medicine programs, there's local farm to school programs, you know, in terms of infrastructure, you know, you have your farm service agencies, the equip programs and stuff. And then we don't want to forget about the regional food business center programs that are coming down the pipeline that are going to be very helpful. But stay connected, stay in the network, stay in the know, because there's always something new coming.
Yes. Thank you, panelists.